Hello and welcome back to the Scuttlebutt. This is the show for those looking to impose their will on the world. I'm your host, Brock Briggs, and today I'm speaking with Heath Smith. Heath is a former Army Command Sergeant Major, and this episode is a download on 27 years of struggle, leadership, and conquering. We discuss how average people have above average careers, why you can't engineer leadership, and who in your unit you should be focusing on when leading a team, as well as overcoming a negative relationship with alcohol. Heath gives very tactical advice on intervening in the life of someone struggling with alcohol and talks about how he's approaching his next great adventure in retirement. Thank you so much for listening. You can find this episode as well as every other episode, transcripts and more at scuttlebuttpodcast.co. Please enjoy this conversation with Heath Smith. Tell me your former military without telling me your former military, cracking a Red Bull at 5:30 p.m.
And honestly, I went 27 years without drinking coffee in the military.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, like I didn't drink coffee or energy drinks for that matter. And now that I'm out, started drinking energy drinks and coffee. I don't know. Well, it started out with coffee, obviously. I never drank coffee in the morning, never drank coffee ever in the military, hardly ever, like maybe a cup every now and then. I wasn't one of those guys, that constantly had a cup of coffee. But yeah, man, I just recently started enjoying coffee. And then my wife found these damn Red Bull, the red edition watermelon, and they are lovely. Like they are lovely.
Well, welcome to the caffeine club. We're happy to have you.
Welcome aboard, son.
Right. Heath, I really appreciate you joining me today. I've really been looking forward to our conversation. I think the best place for us to start today would be for you to maybe spend 2 to 3 minutes. Not going to be a hard stopper there, but a couple minutes on just summarizing 27 years of the Army and what brings you here today.
Okay. Yeah. I came from Odessa, Texas. I grew up really poor, lived in a trailer, was getting in some trouble. Believe it or not, I was not the calm, cool, collected person that you see here my entire life. I was actually, I wasn't making a lot of good decisions as a young man. And, you sing those cadence about, go to war, go to jail kind of things. Well, that used to be kind of a real thing, and that's kind of what happened to me is I got off of probation to join the Army. Joined in 1995 as an infantry soldier. I'm not sure, anyway, we were infantrymen back then. When, of course, Fort Benning, man. And then I really just had one of the most typical infantry careers ever. I was a rifleman, then I was a gunner, and then became mechanized, and then was a Bradley gunner for a while. And then they, took the infantry away from mechanized and light and combined them. And then I went back light as a platoon sergeant. And then as a first sergeant, I was mechanized. And then as an operations sergeant major, I was light. And then I was a mechanized CSM. So I did exactly, like I said, like I tell folks, and like I was telling you in the pre-talk, is I really did exactly what the Army told me to. If the Army said, go be a drill sergeant, I went to be a drill sergeant. If the Army said, go light, go mech, I did that. They said, go be an instructor, I went to be an instructor. They said, go TRADOC, go be an observer controller, I went and did that. So really, I just took the hard jobs that the Army offered me, and I never told them no. I got my degree, or I finished my degree when I was in the Sergeant Major's Academy, business administration. And I got to be a sergeant major, a command sergeant major for 4 years. Once again, did exactly what the Army told me. I was force comm and then went to TRADOC because I guess that's what you do. But yeah, man, my career has not been anything extraordinary. Matter of fact, I think what I really learned over my career was I wasn't extraordinary like I thought I was. When you're a young man, you think you're special. You think you're different. You think you're doing everything cool and everybody else is, behind you. But what you really learn over a long career and, as you grow in life is you're really not exceptional. In most things, you're probably pretty average or maybe even a little above average, maybe. But that's what I learned is I'm just a pretty normal person that just did what I was told. And man, it was a wild ride though. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the entire 27 years. And I take that back. I didn't enjoy the entire 27 years. I enjoyed all of it except for probably the last year and a half. I got pretty jaded on the Army there for a little while. And, when you're a young kid and you look at the sergeant major and go, God, what's that guy's problem? He's got it made, dude did everything. He knows everything. He's why is he such a sour, excuse me, cussing? No cussing?
Yeah, let it fly. You're
okay. Good. Yeah. Why is he such a sour motherfucker? What's his problem? And you figure out that, man, he's just been burnt on, all ends and he's tired. He's not really grumpy. He's just fucking tired, bro. But no, seriously, I went to Ranger school, went to airborne school, did some sniper stuff. And then, like I said, I just retired in September. Like I said, I don't think I ever really did. I don't think I did anything extraordinary. I think I was pretty freaking ordinary.
Why do you think that is? I think that's one of probably the most interesting things that I've heard somebody say, especially after a really long career like that.
Yeah.
Doing the hard jobs that the Army asks you to do. Yeah. I want to ask, like, even if you were an average person, like, how does a truly average person, which in parentheses, I don't believe that is true, but let's just say, for instance, it is. If you are an average person, how does that make an above average career?
I'll tell you, a lot of it has to do with sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice? When you hear people talk about their military career and sacrifice, I don't think a lot of people truly understand what that means, because you do sacrifice a lot. Do you volunteer to go do the things that other people don't want to do? Yeah. And that is literally how you, in the Army anyway, I can't speak for the other services, but in the Army, really, it's just do the hard stuff. I joke around about that. When I was a young man, when it would be raining or whatever, I'm like, fuck yeah, rain, bring it, make this as miserable as possible. I love it. And then right there at the end of my career, I was out at the National Training Center, as a OC, and I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it's sandy and shitty, of course. Anytime they put a military base in a shitty spot, and the wind started blowing real hard, and I got all this dust in my ears and shit. I was like, fuck that, I'm going in. So you go from this hard, tough kid to this old, soft man,
just like an ocean wearing down, like on petrified wood,
right,
forming you into the being.
You're just like, man, I don't want to be miserable anymore. I don't want to be oh God. And I used to, people think I'm joking, but I used to love being miserable, man. We'd get out there in the field, and the more miserable I was, the happier I was. because I knew it'd make for a good story later or whatever, or maybe I thought it made me a tough guy. But yeah, in reality, it's none of that. It just wears your body down. I know, and I joke around too. There, the military is especially the infantry. It's hard on your body, and I didn't realize that until I turned 45. Once I turned 45, man, I feel like the wheels fell off. I used to give people a hard time when they'd have to have surgeries or something. I blew my knee out. That's bad genetics. What's wrong with you? You blame your mom. But when I turned 45, I tore my back up all in one fell swoop. I ruptured the disc in my L4, L5, tore my hamstring and tore my gluteal muscle all at once, man. And I really wish it was a cool story, but it's not. We were having to move stuff around to go into our new building, and I picked a safe up. When I say safe, I'm like the ones that are like twice the size of an old computer or whatever, or the size of one of those old monitors. I picked it up like I was supposed to, but when I sat it down, I just kind of twisted and sat it down, and I felt this snap. I was like, "Ooh, well, that wasn't good." I was cool the rest of the day. I woke up the next morning. My ass cheek was bruised. My hamstring was bruised. And man, I couldn't stand up straight. Couldn't stand up straight long enough to urinate. Couldn't stand up straight long enough to take a shower. So man, it was just, I was hurt bad. And then after that, it seems like as I became, not as mobile, because I really think that's what kept me healthy all those years, was just staying in shape. And man, when I couldn't be mobile anymore, holy crap, man, I was hurt everywhere. I found out I had a torn labrum, torn infraspinatus that I'd had for years torn up. Man, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, that's where a life of being a tough guy will get you, all kinds of torn up shit.
You said something earlier that a lot of people don't maybe understand sacrifice. Right. And I kind of want to riff on that for a second.
Yeah. I
was curious, is your definition of sacrifice doing what others aren't willing to do? Because if that is it, that tells me that your definition of people not really knowing is exactly it, because everybody, when they quote say that they've sacrificed, if other people have done it, then they really haven't.
Right. The things you sacrifice, and, I look back at it, man, and I was away a lot. My family will get around during the holidays, which is really cool nowadays. Parenting adult children are so much better than parenting kids, by the way. But all my kids will get around. They'll start telling stories. I'm like, what? When did that happen? Like, well, you were so-and-so at this school, you were away at this. When you sacrifice, that community, some people spend their lives 30 years in one spot. They have a muffler guy. I don't have a muffler guy. Who has a muffler guy? If you've been around for 30 years in one spot, you have a muffler guy, you got a brake guy, you got all these roots that you put down that we in the military don't do. Do we have our own community? 100% we do, man. Like, we have the best of communities. I love the military community, but it's not, you don't have a muffler guy. You sacrifice all that time with your kids. You sacrifice your body. You sacrifice, I hate to say this, but you sacrifice your mental health. A lot of it. And I was like I said, I was the tough guy for a very long time. I was part of the problem as far as, people taking care of themselves. I really was. I was an asshole when it came to, being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, and being physically fit. If you weren't physically fit, I'd crush you, man. I would, but those are the things you sacrifice. You sacrifice, I got my VA rating, and, after doing all the work, whatever, my wife and I were actually sitting at this exact table, and we got the rating, and we looked at each other and, you're like, well, shit, should I celebrate? Should I celebrate about this? Because really what this is saying is your body's that jacked up. Your whatever percentage you got, that's how fucked up you are. That's how jacked up your body is. So I say that those are the things that you sacrifice. There's a lot of guys and gals, but hell, even us now, like I have to go on these work trips, and when I have to be away from my wife now for like 2 weeks, it pisses me off. Like, used to a year, okay, we'll suck down a year, 9 months, okay, no big deal. But now, when you tell me 2 weeks, I'm like, fuck off. You better cut that down to a week or something, or I'm not going. But anyway, yeah, those are the things that and of course, you have those guys that never came back. Those are the people that really sacrifice. Their families. So people don't understand what it means when you say I sacrifice. Are we well compensated for it? Yes. Do you understand it at the time? I did not. I did not. I think there's some kids out there that understand it. They understand that, if they don't take this recruiter job or whatever, then it's going to cost them. It's going to cost them in their career, and they're okay with that. I was never okay with that. I never sacrificed my career. I did the hard stuff. I did the stuff people didn't want to do. Whether it was, like how many people get out of drill sergeant orders, how many people get out of recruiting orders, how many people get out of, whatever deployments, whatever. They know that it's going to cost their career. But they're okay with it. And I never even gave it a second thought. I just went and did. And that's what I mean by people don't understand it. They don't understand, or I didn't. I say people. I shouldn't say that. I should say I, because I'm the one that didn't understand it until much later. Until actually now, after I had time to reflect on my career and my family, and actually starting to learn what it's like to be in one place for more than 3 years.
If you were doing that all again tomorrow, how would you live differently, do you think?
There's only one thing I would change throughout my career. And I don't even know, looking back now, if I would have changed it then. And that was the alcohol. Like, man, I just didn't understand the amount of alcohol. I was a heavy drinker forever. If I could go back and just change one thing, that would be it. But it also made me who I am now. And I learned some real hard lessons from that. So yeah, that's the one thing I would change, is just the level of alcohol consumption I had throughout my career. We joke around about it a lot, get out of the military with the alcohol problem. But it's really not funny, because it's true, because that's really what it boils down to.
Do you think that military culture perpetuates alcoholism?
Oh yeah, 100%. Absolutely does. Think of one event that you ever went to in the military that wasn't centered around alcohol. Maybe Family Day. And that's only, but more than likely there was somebody there that has some kind of drinking going on. Every event is centered around alcohol. Dining in, the grog. Dining out, the grog. Hail and farewells, usually somewhere where you can drink. I just can't, even like when you used to get promoted, it was, you had to buy a case for how many stripes you had or something, I can't remember what it was, and then you had to buy a case of beer. So everybody came around, if you were a sergeant, you had to buy 3 cases. If you're a staff sergeant, you had to buy 4, if you're a sergeant, made sergeant first class, you had to buy 5. Or, there was a period of time when we did blood ranking and we'd pour beer on people when they were, doing push-ups after they got promoted. And then also the machismo of drinking. How much can you drink? How big is your tank? That kind of thing. It's all centered around alcohol. Do I blame the military? No, I made those decisions. I made the decision to drink like I did. But what it really was, and then I got to the point where not only were my military events centered around alcohol, shit, everything I did was centered around alcohol. Going fishing, case of beer. Doing this, case of beer. Hey, moving, case of beer. Gonna go work in the garage, case of beer. It was just everything was alcohol at some point. So, but yeah, I don't blame the military for it. I do wish that the military would get away from that. And we've tried. The military really has tried to do that. They've tried to get away from that alcohol glorification. It's just almost impossible. It's just ingrained in the culture. It's embedded in it. It's good. It'll take forever to rip that out. Almost like everything it does in the military. It takes a while. It takes a couple of generations to rip it out. I don't know if we're even getting after that or not. I really wish that it would, though, because I guarantee it causes a lot of issues for a lot of kids, man. A lot of, well, I say kids, now that I can spot alcoholism, there's a lot of my peers, not just senior enlisted, but officers that I look at them, man, I know you got a drinking problem. You may not be an alcoholic, but you have a drinking problem. So I wish we would do something. I wish we could figure out something. But it's just so hard to pull some culture out like that. I don't know.
I am sympathetic to your story. Looking back on my own time, I am embarrassed a lot. And I know it was only 4 years, but I'll sometimes wish that I had maybe more to even show for my time. And because I just compare myself from now until then, and I think about how I live and act differently. One thing that I think was interesting, before I joined, I drank, but actually in the service, it seemed as if that is just what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, it's expected.
I don't know, it's not I'm sure that there are people that are using that as kind of a negative coping, that are actually struggling, but this is everybody that is happy, sad, whatever emotion you're feeling, that is kind of what you're just doing.
Yeah. So hey man, today really sucked. Man, we should drink. Right. Hey, you got promoted? Let's drink. Yeah, it's just I think it starts because you got that little frat boy mentality. And like I say, because that's kind of I grew up in the infantry when it was only males, so that's been a huge transition for me to be more inclusive in my speech and in my the way that I but when I reflect, when I look back at it, that's how I remember it. We were like a frat boy fraternity. The barracks life, there is no fraternity that drinks like barracks infantry soldiers. It's just impossible, but that's what we did. And then I just, no matter what was happening, we were getting drunk before we did it. It was like a badge of honor to, drink all night and do a PT test the next day, It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean you have a 12-mile foot march tomorrow and you're going to go drink until 3 a.m.? Makes no sense. That is literally the dumbest thing. But we do it. We did it. And like I said, it was almost like a badge of honor to do stuff like that. Now I look back at just how stupid it was. And how much more present and better I would have been without booze. Not just for my family, but at work too. How many days did I go in hungover and feeling crappy, that if I would have been 100% sober like I am now, and I can't tell you how great it is to wake up and feel not shitty,
Yeah, I
But
saw
yeah,
you recently crossed, I believe, 25 months. That's
yeah,
a big
yeah,
accomplishment. Congratulations.
yeah. Thank you, thank you. So that journey was incredible. Going to the point where the hardest part of that whole thing, it sounds so cliche, but it's true. Is admitting to yourself that you have a problem. Because I was this, like I said, I was this tough infantry guy my whole career that I didn't need your help. You know, I was gonna accomplish what I was gonna accomplish, whether you were gonna help me or not. And I didn't need your help, and I could do it on my own. And so I thought I could quit on my own. I thought I could do all of that shit on my own. Boy, was I wrong. And I was that was the one thing that is very humbling, is to realize that something like that has a hold on you, and you can't fix it yourself, and you have to have somebody help you through that. And that was tough for me. That was probably one of the hardest things for me, honestly.
If there was somebody else that was maybe in a similar position, or maybe knows somebody in a similar position,
Yeah.
and let's say that it was up to you to guide them on intervening, what do you think is the Kickstarter for something like that?
Number one is do not be confrontational about it. You're not gonna man, you go talking to an alcoholic that's been hiding their alcohol consumption, and tell them that they've got a drinking problem. That should all it's going to do is irritate them. Really, the most supportive thing you can do is help them identify it themselves. And I think coming from somebody that has been there would probably be a lot easier, because you have that discovery. Like me being able to talk to somebody about their alcoholism would be easier, because I know what they're doing. I know how they're hiding it. I know what they're doing. Coming from, if you've never had an alcohol problem, because for even for the times that I had an alcohol problem and didn't think I didn't understand it. I didn't comprehend what was going on. So until I was able to get sober and look back, that's when I started to understand what the problem was. Even like I didn't understand what the problem was. I couldn't even identify the problem. And without being able to identify the problem, you can't find a solution. And that's the problem with alcoholics, is they rationalize everything. If I was having to guide someone into that, I think it has to be a very personalized situation. That I don't think there is a way to say, here is a guidebook for every alcoholic. Everybody's got an alcohol problem. It has to be a very individualized situation. Now, are all the things that alcoholics do pretty much the same? Hell yeah. If you've ever read the big book, is what they call it, the blue book, of Alcoholics Anonymous, man, they have a whole bunch of stories in the back of it. And that's really how I realized that I had a problem when I was in detox. You don't have shit else to do. You can't watch TV. You can't do any of this stuff. So I started reading the blue book, and maybe that's their game plan. I don't know. But you start reading those stories in the back, you're like, because at the time I was still kind of pissed. I was like, maybe I don't have a problem. Maybe I shouldn't be here. Why am I at this? Why am I at it? And I started reading all the stories, like, I don't know. That sounds a lot like me, man. Yeah, there you are. Fuck, man. Maybe you are an alcoholic. Maybe you do need this help. So I think it has to be a very personalized, very intimate way to bring those things up. You can't just put out a step one, do this, step two, do this. It has to be somebody that really knows that person and understands alcoholism to get them help. Now, that's the sad thing about it, is usually it takes a catastrophic event to make an alcoholic realize he's an alcoholic, which I get is kind of shitty to say, but it's true. I was fortunate enough. I didn't, the only catastrophic event I had really was, I got put in the hospital because my blood pressure was through the roof. And that it was just because I needed a detox. So they put me in a 5-day detox. And that was kind of my, well, shit, man, maybe I need to go get some help. And so then I went down to Warrior's Heart for 45 days. And man, I can't praise that place enough. Warrior's Heart is in Bandera, Texas, and it's a PTSD and alcohol treatment center for first responders and veterans and service members. It's absolutely an incredible organization that those people save a lot of lives, man. They save a lot of lives, and it's not your typical 30-day program. The people in this program have to want to be there. It can't be like court ordered shit, like, and I think that's the problem with probably most treatment centers is, you send people in there that have to be there or they'll go to jail. It's a different story than sending a group of people together that want to be there and want to get better, So that's what Warrior's Heart is. Like I said, I can't sing the praises of that place enough.
How do you think that you live differently now, being separated from that?
Man, it's really a freedom that you don't understand when you drink. When I was drinking, I didn't understand how tied down I was to alcohol. Everything I did revolved around alcohol, man. I wasn't joking about that. Like, hey, man, I'm going to go mow the backyard. Well, I got to get a 6-pack first, or towards the later part of my drinking was whiskey. I drank whiskey, but that, that's what everything revolved around that. So now, literally, the only thing that is not free for me, when I'm not tied down to alcohol or when I'm going to get my next drink or whatever it is, I have to be careful about what events I go to. It's not like, when you hear about alcoholism on the movies and stuff like that, you hear, oh, you can't be around alcohol again, or they're going to fucking relapse and, drink their faces off, or it's not like that, man. Not for me anyway. I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, man, you can put wine, beer. I can be around all that stuff all the time. Half the time I still have beer and, some random leftover from Thanksgiving beer or something in the house. I don't keep it around. I still don't keep whiskey in the house. I'm still not there yet. But it's not like it. It's not like that in the movie, like in the movies where you have to, oh God, I can't be around alcohol. I can't, it's not like that. It's just occasionally, you get a, oof, maybe I don't want to drink. But then you're like, oh God, why would I do that? It's off to the races if you do that. So that's the one thing I would say is, man, you're really free without alcohol. Like that's what it's like. And I couldn't imagine going through transition out of the Army or out of the military with still being on booze, man. That would have been so bad, because that's a big transition, going from 27 years of, eat, sleep, drink, your whole life is the Army. And people act like they have this work-life separation. That's not a thing. Not a thing. When you're in the military, there's no work-life balance. Everything is work. You live on post. Your kids go to Army schools. Your kids hang out with other Army kids, and your wife hangs out with other Army spouses. And there's no work-life separation. Do you get time off from work? Yes, but there is no work-life balance per se. I couldn't have, because it is a huge transition. Leaving the military is huge. It is. You don't know who you are without it. Who, especially after you spend that, for some of the younger guys that have gotten out, like I said, I think you said you did 4 years. Mm-hmm. That's a huge chapter of your life. 4 years is a huge chunk of your life. It really is. But whenever you did it for 20 years or 27 years, it's hard to figure out who you are without it. What is my purpose in life? I don't know if I do that, but I couldn't have imagined doing that, trying to figure all that out while I was drinking. I would have been a mess, man. I would have been a shit show for sure.
I think that's why they really try to encourage being plugged in with people when you get out. And I think that some of the
100%.
stronger VSOs in the space understand that the community element to service members after service is probably at the pinnacle of importance when it comes to like every other resource that should be kind of offered to vets. Kind of
100% agree with that. Have you read that book by Sebastian Younger? I think it's Younger. Anyway,
what's the name of the book? I'll write it down.
Tribe.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, that's really what he talks about. Like he talks about, that PTSD exists and it's real, but what service members really, and you have a purpose and all that when you're in the military, so you miss that. But he thinks what people miss the most is that tribe, that that group of people that you had for so long that were with you, whether you were black, brown, Hispanic, no matter what your sexual orientation was or whatever your gender is. They were just this group of people, because it's funny, you see them around town, right? When you're in military towns, you'll see this group of kids and you're like, those are soldiers. How do you know those are soldiers? Because those kids never would be hanging out together if they weren't in the military, right? You see them, you're like,
right.
Like these are kids that share this common bond of the military. And it's the same thing when you get out. He talks about, like we're this tribal people. And that's, a lot of what we're missing in our daily lives, just in regular America now, is this sense of community. And that's what you get in the military. You have this sense of community. And when you leave, especially the way you leave the military, like I think I tweeted about this, when you drive off post with that DD-214, like there's no banners on the side of the road, nobody clapping for you. You just leave. That's it.
Extremely uneventful.
It really is. And you're like, so that's it, huh? I'm just out of the Army now. That's it. The military does a lot better now when they put us out the door, of giving us these resources. Hell, man, it's almost like there's too many resources. Like it's almost like you have to have somebody help you navigate the resources. There's just so many out there. There's corporate whatever, hiring our heroes. There's all these veterans organizations and all this help out there. There really is. And like I said, it's almost overwhelming just because there is so much. Like, man, somebody just tell me what to do. Like I said, for 27 years, dude, just what do I do? What's the next hard thing I need to do? And so I can do it and get it over with.
Well, that is the hard thing. And I've like joked about that in some ways to myself internally, because now looking back on my time in, like being out is actually, that is the harder step. Like that you just asked like what the next thing is, like, oh, well, this is it. It's like, this is actually, being out of it is almost more difficult, because then you have just like unlimited leeway again, right. And you can kind of like reach in any direction,
right? Yeah. No left or right limit. Like you're like, I can just do anything I want,
right?
That's like the options are just mine. I can just, and so I think you're right. I think that is the hard part of the whole thing, is just, what do I do next? Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of veterans that just becomes overwhelming, especially those that didn't learn a trade, didn't get a transferable skill for the outside. The Army does so well. I'd say the Army, the military, because I think almost all of them are doing the what are those things, internships now, like the Army and the military's all got all these cool internships that you can do for your last several months in the military. You can go work at Amazon for 9 months before you get out, or I don't think they're not. Some of them are a little bit longer, but I don't know how long they were. But hell, I I should have taken advantage of one of those, but I couldn't really think of one that I wanted to do. They said it was just too many choices.
You had this tweet that I thought was really interesting. You said being an alpha is like being a leader if you have to tell people you aren't.
So to me, that kind of goes like, if you're running around telling people you're in charge, you're not in charge, man. You know, hey, I'm the leader of this boat. No, actually, you're not. There's some one of your subordinates is actually running the show, and you're just running around telling people you're in charge. And I really believe that good, true leaders are like alphas. You know, they are the alphas of the pack. But you know, being an alpha is not what I can consider to be the leader, the alpha of the pack. The tough guy is not the guy that's beating people down, or you know, when I get that picture in my head, it's like The Walking Dead. You know, the guy that's got the spiked bat is not really the leader. You know, he's not an alpha. You know, an alpha takes care of his pack. You know, when somebody comes to attack him, he defends them, but he also, you know, occasionally has to dole out tough punishments or, you know, tough corrections to the people in his pack. But it's not because he wants to show them he's in charge. It's because he actually genuinely cares about those people. And I think that's the biggest difference between the people that walk around, you know, with this manly chip on their shoulder and, you know, just the true badass, right? The dude that's really a badass, he doesn't have to tell you he's a badass. And he may not look like much, but when it comes down to it and something bad is happening, all eyes are going to go to that person that's in charge, whether they're the person that's wearing the actual rank and that should be in charge. But when something goes bad, that's who they look to. That's the person, that's the alpha, that's the leader, that's the servant leader, because that's the person that everybody knows is going to take care of them. Nobody cares how great you are when shit's going great, man. Nobody cares how awesome of a leader you are because things are going well. People start to look at you as a leader and watch everything you do when times aren't good, when shit's going bad, when a bad decision's been made. That's when they look at you. That's when they care what your decisions are. They don't give a shit when, you know, when everything's rolling and happy. Hell, anybody can be in charge of that. That's easy, you know. Being in charge of a sinking ship is the real hard, you know, when you're having to make real hard decisions, real life and death decisions, or, you know, even, you know, when I look at like making decisions about, you know, soldiers that have made bad choices. I got a DUI when I was a private. Probably should have been a hint about my alcohol problem. And I had a battalion commander that took a chance on me, man. Lieutenant Colonel Brown. Never forget the guy. He allowed me to stay in the military. And I tell people, I used to tell soldiers that story all the time. You know, whenever they were in trouble for something, I'd be like, hey, man, what happened to you doesn't define who you are. You know, I'm super glad that people don't judge me on all my bad decisions. You know, that's when you need to take care of people, is when they're at their lowest, not pile on them and make them feel worse. You know, I'm not saying, you know, blow sunshine up people's asses or whatever, but whenever bad things are going bad for soldiers, man, the kind word, you know, letting them know that you still care about them. That's what it means to be in charge. That's what it means to be a leader, an alpha. You know, that's what it means to me is, you know, taking care of those kind of kids, the kids that are in the low spot. You know, the badass kids are going to take care of themselves. You know, you don't have to. I think there used to be a book written by an old NCO. It's called the 3 meter zone. You know, he's talking about, you know, like people at the 5 meter zone. You know, he talked about it like it was like leadership was a range. You know, your 150 meter soldier is your soldier. You just have to barely give him a left and right guidance, and he's going to go execute it and kill it. But whenever you get that soldier that's in your 3 meter zone, that's the one that you really need to pay attention to, because something bad's going to happen. The decisions they're making are not going to be good, whether it's self-harm or whatever. It's always those kids that you have to focus the most on.
How would you encourage a young leader trying to step into those shoes?
Okay, and I'm going to go away from common military thought processes. Everybody thinks that you can make a leader. You can send them to enough schools. You can, send them to whatever leadership school, and you're going to make them a leader.
First off, do you think that is the Army's sentiment on that? Do you think that the Army believes that?
Oh yeah, 100%. They think they really do believe that they can make people into leaders, and I think you can make people into managers by doing that. Because you can manage stuff, but to be a true leader, I think you've either got it or you don't. To be a great leader, in my opinion, either you have it or you don't. Can you refine and hone your skills as a leader? Absolutely. The more self-aware you are about things, the more aware you are of how it affects people as you get older. You get better at it. But the one thing that I would tell people, a young soldier, is you actually have to be concerned about your soldiers. Like, it can't be made up. They're going to see through that shit, man. If you care about them and truly care about their well-being, they'll know. And that's literally all it takes. Because when you think about their well-being, that means whether it's a good correction, and when I say correction, whether it's, scuffing them up or writing accounts, whatever, it's all done because you care about them, not because you're trying to make them suffer or trying to turn them into something they're not. You just have to genuinely give a fuck. I'm really trying to quit cussing, by the way. You want to talk about something that's hard. After 27 years of having like this horribly foul mouth and becoming a civilian and not having a foul mouth, that is a challenge. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would tell them, is you can't make it up. You can't fake it, man. You can't fake that genuine concern. If you're actually giving a crap about your guys or gals, they're going to know. I think it was it Colin Powell? It was one of those general officers, really good ones. Like, nobody cares how much nobody care. I can't remember how it exactly goes. They don't care what you know until they know that you care. Something like that. Paraphrased, obviously, because my brain's not sharp enough to remember shit like that verbatim. But yeah, something like, you can basically know all the books and you can learn all the shit that you want, but until you genuinely care about somebody, you can't lead them. You can manage them. Yes. Managing people is totally different. It's just like managing stuff. You can fill out your Excel spreadsheet, make sure their dental is good and their academic report is done or whatever. But do you really care about that person? If you really, truly care about their well-being, that's when you can start leading them. But until then, you can't lead them. You can just manage them.
How do you think that we ought to best do that in practice? Is that just getting involved in their daily lives?
No, God, stay out of it. Once again, it's a very personal approach. Like if somebody would have been all up in my business when I was young, man, I would have told them go fuck themselves, right? Get away from me, dude. I don't need you in my house. I don't need you to come check out my family. Dude, and that's what I'm saying. You can't fake it, and that's the biggest thing. Is all of that stuff is trying to get people, like an old guy like me, trying to make a young sergeant care about his soldiers. That's where we get into trouble as leaders. And I'm not saying like trouble, but when we get into confusing things, is like, get to know your soldiers. You should know their families' names. You should know where they live. Yeah, but it's not You can't force that. If you were one of my soldiers and I'm just having conversations with you, that's how I find out that stuff, because you voluntarily tell me about it, not because I'm asking you about it. Like, hey, where do you live? How many kids do you have? What's your kids' names? That's not, maybe you do that in the beginning, but just over time, you get to know your soldiers. And it's not, you can't force that. You really can't. It just has to be something that's natural, in my opinion. And that's what a lot of, I think, senior folks are trying to do now, is to, hey man, care about your soldiers. You should know that about your soldiers. But if you actually care about them, you would already know these things. You would naturally understand that, hey, this kid's having problems at home. Because you know why? Because you talk to them, especially when you've only got 5 soldiers. When you're a sergeant, you've only got 5 soldiers. When you're a staff sergeant, this is the Army, of course. The Navy's got like what, tech sergeant or shit, I don't even know. The Navy's ranks just blow my mind. Like, Seaman 9th class of the motor room. But no, when you're, we'll use E's. That's probably easier, like E5, E6. You're in E5 in the infantry. You've got five soldiers. Mm-hmm. When you're in E6, you got 9 to 12. When you're a platoon sergeant, you got 30 or 40. Or in E7, you get 30 or 40. But when you're an E6 or an E5, if you're not in one of these weird technical jobs, where all you do is work on, some wobulator shaft or whatever, you've only got this many solar. How is it that you are not, that you don't already know these things about them? If you've had, if you've been in charge of them for a year, how do you not know what their kids' names are? How do you not know what their spouse's name is? How do you not know how many dogs they have? Haven't you had conversations while y'all were working? When you were doing stuff, are you just not talking to these kids? And maybe now it's different. I'm going to sound like one of those old guys now, because, we text, but you know what? Even in a text string, you're with 4 or 5 folks, you're cracking jokes. You know what kind of a sense of humor this person has. What upsets them, what doesn't upset them, what gets them going, what motivates them, what doesn't motivate them. You learn these things just naturally. You can't force that shit, man. And I no matter how hard the military tries, we can't force it. You just can't. You just actually have to be a generally good human to be a good leader. If you're a shitty human, you're going to be a shitty leader, man. That's just the way it is. If you just don't care about people, you're going to be a shitty leader. You're just not going to be worth the fuck, honestly. I don't know. Like I say, and I don't think you can teach that stuff, man. You can teach people to be better at it, but you can't teach them to care. And you can't make them care. They either do or they don't. And you know what? Honestly, we don't need, Sergeant Major Grinston in every squad. The Army needs people to come in, do a mediocre job, and leave. We need that. We need those people. Honestly, we do. We need, hey, we need you to come in and do 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, and leave. Because at some point you have to anyway. Because if not, there is no sergeant major. The pyramid goes up, and people have to leave and people have to fall the wayside. So you absolutely have to have average folks like me that just hang around long enough to get promoted. But you also have to have people that are going to come in and do a mediocre job and leave. Or you need people to come in and do superstar and rock star shit. You need those guys to come in too and do rock star jobs and then go on to be CEOs of companies, because that spreads the Army message too. That spreads the military message. That spreads the Navy message. You can come in, do 4 years, do 10 years, and have a super successful career, because you got to admit, it does do you some good. on the outside. That little bit of military experience does you some good. It puts your foot in the door for some things. So we need all those people, but don't try to make everybody a rock star. Bad shit's going to happen. And there's nothing that Sarge can do about it. And just understand that as a leader. Anyway.
No, that's all really good stuff. I like that. It's super interesting and very realistic, I think, because that's not what you normally hear about in those types of conversations around leadership. Right. It's not, but it's
everybody wants to think that everybody can be a good leader. It's just not the case, man. Not everybody can do it.
I might call that a hot take.
So some people just aren't cut out for it. They just don't have that care for their fellow humans, especially those that they're in charge of. Some of them, and of course there are folks that make it through too, right? There are guys that don't really give a crap about soldiers that actually make it to the highest levels of the military, and they do it by shitting on people their whole way up. That's just going to happen. You try to catch it as soon as you can, but that's literally where you get the term toxic leadership, which I hate that term because it gets thrown around so much, right? Everybody just toxic leader. Are they toxic, or do they just hurt your feelings? There's a difference. There's a difference between somebody being toxic and somebody making you do stuff you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, yeah, I made you come in on your day off. Was that crappy? Yes. Was it necessary? Absolutely. I would never make somebody come in on their day off unless it was absolutely necessary. But we're in the people business. Well, in the Army, you're in the people business. And then, I'm going to poke fun at the Navy a little bit more, and the Air Force, because, the big thing about the Navy is the boat, right? Like,
yeah,
the boat is y'all call them ships or boat? I know my cousin is in the Navy, and I can't remember. It's like ship or boat. One of them y'all get offended about.
I use both. I don't know.
Like some people in the Navy, they get upset about that shit, right? Like,
oh man,
it's a boat or it's a ship. I don't remember which one it is.
I don't care because I don't know the difference. So I probably should, but yeah, that's fine for now.
What did you do in the Navy?
I worked in aviation. I did live on a boat or a ship for. Right. Hang on a second. We've got the Google machine at our fingertips here.
Check out the Google machine. See what it is, because I know like some people really get upset about it. It's a boat.
Well, it's a size difference. Okay, we knew that. According to the Naval Institute, a boat is small enough to be carried aboard a larger vessel, and a vessel large enough to carry a smaller one is a ship. What a weird definition.
That's weird, right?
Mentalfloss.com. Shout out to them.
Thanks for that. So if I can carry it's a ship, an RB, whatever, RB-15s is what we call rubber boat 15. Yeah. So if I could carry that on my pontoon boat, it is a boat. It's a ship.
So it's right. So then that would make your pontoon boat a ship.
Right.
Maybe it's contextual. Like it doesn't, a ship is not a ship, but a boat is not a boat.
There's nothing better than a couple of vets from different services, giving each other a hard time. I love it, man. It's so much fun. It's, especially Marines, because they get so wound around the axle.
Oh man,
I love it. Then just to give those guys a hard time, it's so much fun because they get so excited. They're so excitable about it. So for me, like the Navy, it's about most of their budget is spent on boats, ships, but ships. Let's say ships. We'll call them ships.
It's a ship.
The Air Force, most of their budget is spent on the airplane. Well, the Army is people. It's a people business. Do we spend a lot of money on equipment? Yeah, but the Army is a people business. The Marine Corps, they're so small. They're a people business as well. Mm-hmm. And I think we get away from that idea of we're all in the people business, because if you run any good corporation, what is your product? Like if you like, let's say that you're in retail and your product is shirts, but as a manager, a leader of that organization, whenever you say things like the customer is always right, you take away from what's important, and that's your employees, because without your employees, you don't make shirts, you don't sell shirts, you don't do any of those things. So taking care of your employees should be your number one priority, because without them, you don't get to have that end product. And whenever you're in a life and death business like the military, you forget sometimes that the actual end of the day, the most important thing is that kid pulling security on the corner. That's the thing that matters at the end of the day, because without him, you can't do that cool shit like war fighting and killing the enemy. Without that kid to pull that trigger and actually put his sights on and be able to do that, you forget that's the end product, especially when you become more senior. Everything you do comes down to that kid pulling security on the corner. And it's real easy to lose sight of that, especially as you start getting, like I said, more senior, because you go to so many meetings and you go to this thing and that thing, and you're like, God damn it, man. Just let me go spend time with these kids for just 10 minutes today. Can I just get out of, I used to equate all the meetings we used to go to, I used to equate it, what you've got me doing here is standing on the scale trying to lose weight, man. I can't stand here and lose weight. I got to go do shit. I got to, but you get so wrapped around the process of being a leader that you don't do any fucking leading. You're standing on the scale trying to lose weight. You're not the process of, making sure this kid's got his dental appointment or he's qualified on his gun. That's all really cool. But when was the last time I got to go spend time with this kid? So especially as you get to be more senior, it's really easy to lose sight of that shit, man. But anyway, I think we have to have all of them. We got to have the troubled kids. We got to have, and whatever wolf you feed is the one that's going to grow. Remember that in any organization, in my opinion. If you're the guy focused on people that are screwing things up, you're focused on the wrong shit, man. I used to have my buddies, my peers, especially sergeant majors, real easy to get focused on the shitheads, because that's the people that you spend all the time with. Because, like I said, the rock star kid, all you got to do is tell him once he's gone, he's going to go take care of himself. But you end up spending all this time on, the kid that got the DUI, or, this kid that, did drugs, or those are the kids you end up spending all this time with. But the most important part of it is really the kids that's doing the right thing. Go spend some time with that kid. I keep calling them kids because I literally have children their age. So, like some of the lieutenants that came in towards the end, like literally I have kids your age, man. You look like a baby to me because my kids are your age. So I get into this bad habit of calling them kids because literally when I was a sergeant major, my son I have a daughter that while she was in the military transitioned or started her transition from male to female. And so once again, I look back and I'm like, my son, but my daughter, anyway. Yeah, I have kids your age. So when I think of those kids, they're literally just kids and they're just learning all this stuff. But you end up forgetting that those kids, the good ones, to go spend time with them. You really do. But at the end of the day, that's the kid that's important. Not the kid that got in trouble. If you focus on that, if you feed that, that's what will grow in your organization. Because it's almost like let's say you got 3 kids, one of them is always getting in trouble and you're spending all your time with that kid. Well, hell, if I was the middle kid or the older kid, maybe I start getting in trouble. So you start giving me attention, dad, mom, but it's the same thing as in an organization. If you're focused on these kids that are doing the wrong things, why would the kids that are doing the right things do the right things? They're not getting any attention for it. So you have to make sure, that you reward the good person, the good wolf, so that the wolf will grow. And I had to really remind myself that as a sergeant major is not get into the weeds and getting marred down by the bad things that are going on in your organization. You got to really feed the kids that are doing the good things, man, and focus on that in your organization, or you will. Man, you'll spend all your time, you'll be a miserable son of a bitch as a sergeant major or as a senior leader in the military, because you're spending all your time dealing with that instead of, writing awards or going around handing out coins, even though they're just trinkets and they mean nothing to anybody. Walk up and hand a kid that you just catch doing the right thing. Maybe he's just sweeping the motor pool. Maybe he's just, turning a wrench, or, maybe he's just cleaning his rifle, but nobody told him to do that. And you walk up, you hand him a coin, man, that stuff spreads like a wildfire. That, hey man, what did you get that coin for? Yeah, Sergeant Major just walked up and said, hey man, glad I caught you doing the right thing today. Here's you a coin. And that stuff spreads like wildfire. And instead of you standing in front of your formation talking about, don't add to the population, don't subtract from the population, you talk about all the bad things in life. Instead of that, you actually get to, teach these kids that literally just do the right thing occasionally will get you a reward. Anyway, but yeah, that is I get caught up on a lot of the senior level stuff, because that's held the last 8 years of my career. I was a sergeant major, so that's the most of my military career. I spent more of my career as a sergeant major than I did of any other rank. The E1, when you get to stay in E1 for a year, E2, if you make it twice or 3 times, maybe you get to spend there, 3 years, for E4, you can spend, 3-4 years there, E5, 2 or 3 years there. But I spent damn near 7 years of my military career as a sergeant major, almost 8 years as a sergeant major. So, that's I guess that's more of my experience. And what's weird though is very few people get to make it, or are fortunate enough to hang around long enough to be a sergeant major. So I don't know, I guess you have to know your audience, maybe of the podcast. Who is your, who's your main audience? I don't know. Is it veterans, or is it, service members, or, who do you reach, And I guess that's a hard question for you too. What's your main audience? What audience you trying to reach? Because I know that your podcast is, in its infancy. So what audience is it?
Yeah, I hope that it speaks to both in some respect.
Yeah,
I think
all
that
of them, right?
I think that has actually been kind of an interesting challenge for me, as I've, especially starting something like this. You really need to focus on like a really niche group of people, and I've struggled to just pick one or the other. And as this has kind of evolved, my mission is to hopefully have conversations that both parties could benefit from. It's not just questions about whether you're out or you're in. It's
right.
about how to make better decisions and earn more money and think deeper about things.
Yeah.
That's because that's the stuff that I like. That's the stuff that I care about. I don't care who it's coming from, but if it makes my life better, then I'm about it.
See, that's me too, man. And that was something that it kind of took me by storm, really, was as I started maturing as a leader, how do I make myself better at this? And is that reading books? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're a leader, you're a reader. I believe that in my heart. And I very rarely set time aside to actually turn pages on a book. So what I started doing, and my son says that I'm a psychopath for this, is when I was working out, like on the treadmill, on the bike, lifting, whatever, is I started listening to books, and then I started listening to podcasts. And I said, I did that while I was working out. My son's like, what? what do you mean you're not listening to music? I was like, I used to listen to music when I worked out, but then I realized, man, I just don't have time in my life to sit down and read. So, man, I got to multitask. So I started listening to podcasts and reading books but I'm a firm believer that if you're not trying to make yourself better every day, you won't be better. It doesn't just naturally happen. You've got to work at that shit. And, I found that very interesting that, something that makes me better, I'm about it. And that when you just said that, that's, man, I'm behind that. You've got to actually work at it. You're not going to just all of a sudden become a better human because life decided that you were going to be better. That's not how it works, man. You gotta actually put effort into that shit. whether it's physically, mentally, like I said, part of that mental shit. I used to be part of the problem on that deal, man. As I got older too, what I realized was I was giving out all this great advice that I wasn't following. Right? Like, no, man, you should really go seek help if you need it, man. Go do that. Go seek mental counseling. Because that's not all there is to mental health. It's not all about going and seeing a psychiatrist or whatever. Part of it is about just taking care of yourself, whether it's, that little bit of time that you have to read a book or listen to a book or whatever, but I wasn't taking my own advice. That's where I think I got myself in trouble with booze, as well as I wasn't taking care of myself mentally. So, the best way to quiet the noise in your head, booze, man, that sure is easy. It's an easy way to quiet that, because I've got ADHD and all these other mental health problems, of course, but booze sure was an easy way to make things quiet in my mind. That I wasn't running from anything. As a matter of fact, my drinking, a lot of it came from celebratory. Hell, man, I just finished a hard ass week. Let's go drink some booze, man. But yeah, I wasn't taking the time to make myself better. I wasn't taking the time needed in a lot of ways to make myself a better person. I was literally just towards the end of just going through the motions of daily life, and I got where I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying the little things in life that I should have been appreciating. So, man, when you said that, man, that just really set off a lot of bells for me. Is how do you make yourself better? Is it whatever it is? Do those things for yourself, and don't. Man, I was taking care of everybody else's problems. I was fixing everybody else, but I wasn't fixing me. So I really do think that really, like I said, that hit home with me, man. Is whatever it is that makes you better, do it. Whether it's whenever you're focusing on optimal human performance, or whenever you're focusing on just fuck, man, give me a second, let me fix myself. Whatever it is, if you're having problems or if you're focusing on being optimally better, that shit takes effort, man. And I'm not saying that by all, like I told you, I'm just an average, ordinary person. But if you're going to be better, you've actually got to put effort in that. And I 100% believe that. You can't just sit around and expect life to make you better, because it's not. You've actually got to put effort into that, whatever that is, whether it's, like I said, fixing, your PTSD, because, anybody that deploys, looks in the belly of the beast is going to have some sort of mental baggage that goes with that shit, man. It's just part of it. Does that mean you're broken? Man, I hate that broken soldier shit. I really do. I hate it. I hate it. Hollywood portrays it that way. And, a lot of soldiers feel like that about themselves. And, I don't buy into it, man. You're only broken if you allow yourself to be broken. Now, once again, that doesn't mean don't reach out for help, because God damn it, man, I made that mistake. And I really thought that I could fix my own problems, and you can't always fix them. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can make yourself better by just sucking it up and making yourself better. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you got to go out and ask for that help. And God damn it, who decides what that is? I don't know. And I don't know the answer to that. If you can answer that one, let me know, because I don't know the answer to that shit, man. And God, I think we get ourselves into, or I get myself into, dark places whenever I realize that, man, I didn't reach out soon enough, or and I worry about a lot of my soldiers now, man, because I've had a couple of them, more than I want to acknowledge, more than I want to talk about, for sure, that have, made that permanent decision to, in their lives. And, when I was in the depths of my darkest place with alcohol, I actually thought about that shit too. That's, I used to say things like, suicide is selfish. It's a selfish act. And I know a lot of people don't like talking about that shit, but I used to say that. And then I got myself into a place where, man, I was just so fucking miserable. I was so drunk that, man, there was that split second. And that's all it takes, is that split second of despair, to where you take that one moment. And I guarantee very few people take their own lives when they're sober. I would veterans anyway, I would venture out to say that there are very few veterans that take their lives when they're sober. I don't know the statistics, but I would be willing to bet there are very few that are like stone cold sober and go, yep, this is the moment, and finish them. Because most veterans don't take their lives by taking pills, or whatever. Most veterans take their lives with a gun. And I've heard those things, if you lock your gun up, that the seconds that it takes you to unlock that gun is the seconds that maybe you decide not to take your life or whatever. But yeah, man, mental health is serious shit. And it what was that Ronald Reagan quote? Government is serious business for serious people. I kind of feel like that about mental health. It's serious business for everybody, though. Everybody, man, at some point, there's this decision. And the generation that I grew up in, we didn't really, until my generation actually is looking back and going, man, we probably would have been a lot better off if we had actually taken our mental health serious. We just didn't. It's just not something we did. And now I look back at it, and there's a lot of time, because I still see a counselor, whether I need to or not, honestly, whether I'm in a headspace, because I think military helps us out with VA counselors and all that. But I do, man. Even when I don't think I need it, I still go and talk. And sometimes some shit comes out that I didn't need to talk about, even though I didn't know I needed to. And sometimes talking isn't the answer for me. But at the end of the day, there are some things to be said about whether it's optimal performance or it is getting the help to fix some things. It's all some of it's critical thinking and some of it is fixing it when you need to. And man, once again, I don't know when that is. I don't know. And I think each person has to answer that for themselves. I think it's a very personalized thing as far as mental health. How do you make yourself better? How do you optimally perform? And when do you know that it needs to, that you need to fix something? Man, that's all very personal. I don't know the answer for everyone. I know I learned some hard lessons when it comes to all that shit. And I don't know if I could ever teach those lessons, because all of mine came and they all became very personal. So I don't know what the right answer is to any of that. I do know optimal performance. I know how to do that. I know how to make people better whenever they're doing well. I know how to, fine tune people's performance, whether it's mental or physical. But there is that point where, those who can't do teach. But what was the other one? Those that can't teach. God, I can't remember. There was somebody was telling me really funny. Now I feel like I can ask because I can't think of it. It's like those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach. Anyway, I can't remember it, but yeah, it was all about performance and whether it's getting better or optimally for. I don't know where that answer is, but I know that each person has to be thinking critically to answer that question. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, we talk about critical thinking, and really critical thinking is just thinking about your thought process, right? Like, how do we get to that at the end of the day? And I don't know what the answer is for everybody. I know what mine is. And I know that I have to be in a good position to perform optimally. But I do know now that when I'm getting into that dark place, because I haven't been taking care of myself. So like I said, I know that's all very individual. And I wished there was a way that we could, as leaders, as people, know when that is. Well, like, you could look at someone and go, I know what that person needs. And we just can't do that. We can't read minds. Like I said, once again, that whole thing is just, I get so fascinated by it, right? I get so fascinated by this thinking about being better, and how do you get better? How do you perform optimally? And then how do you not get into this dark place, man? That all is just so fascinating to me, man. I really do. I go down these weird rabbit holes with it. Anyway, man, I just took you on a wild ride there, huh?
No, you're good. You're good. You said that a lot of your time, presumably in the Army, has been spent learning how to fine tune people's mental and, I'm guessing, physical performance to some degree. Yeah. How do you think that we can best do that?
So soldiers, man, we teach them. So training is really what we're doing, is we're teaching you to go against your natural instincts. And that's what a lot of training is in the infantry. Just think about it. Man, we make soldiers do weird shit, right? Like, normally when you hear the sound of gunfire and it's coming in your direction, your natural reaction should be to get the fuck away from it. That's the natural human reaction, right? That's the flight or fight response. So in the military, we are teaching you to go 100% against the flight response. Like, that's what training is. Training is teaching you to not do that. Training is teaching you, conditioning may be a better word than teaching. Maybe it's conditioning, because what we're trying to get you to do goes against everything that your body is telling you to do. So how do you get someone to do that? Right? Like, that's the crux of the Army, is we're taking you on this journey, right? We're taking you from this point where you're just coming in as a civilian, and then we're taking you to this point not only, as we take you through the training matrix, we're not only teaching you to not run, right? Like that's the first thing we teach you is when people are shooting at you, don't run away. And then now we're teaching you to lead people not only to not run away, but run towards the gunfire. And now we're not only teaching you to not run away from it, we're teaching you to figure out a way to kill the person that's shooting. And now I'm not only teaching you to do that, I'm teaching you to do that on a large scale, right? So that's really what being an Army infantryman is all about. Is number one, don't run from the gunfire. Number two, run towards the gunfire. Number three, figure out a way to kill them. And then number four is how do we do that on a large scale and do it successfully without dying? So, man, it's really all about a mental game in the end, especially, when you hear like UFC fighters, you hear them talk about imposing their will on other people. And really, that's what we do in the military is we're imposing our will on another force, whether it's a country or, terrorists or whatever. That's really what we're doing. At the end of the day is we're imposing our will on somebody else. Like UFC fighters do it one-on-one, is imposing their will on somebody and, thinking ahead far enough in the game to beat that person. Well, us in the infantry and the service, whether you're a signal guy or a medic or whatever, you're still part of this contraption, this organization that imposes its will on another force, on another group of people. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's that fine tuning of that human mind to impose its will on something. Man, that's hard. It sounds easy, right? When you say it, but then when you get this grand scale, whether it's a squad or a platoon or a company or, a boat, is when things are terrifying, this is what you do. And you just do it naturally because you've done it so many times and you've done it under these high stress situations. So no wonder whenever at the end of this thing, we all have mental problems because we've just literally taught you to do shit that your mind doesn't want you to do. So no wonder, at the end of the day, we have these mental health problems. We have these because literally that's what we've done. We've broken the way that your body should react and does react into a whole different world. Anyway, yeah, that's whenever you break it down, you start thinking like that. It gets more and more fascinating. And then how do you take that, pull it out of somebody, and then throw them back into the world, and then expect them to just perform? And some people do it really well, right? Like some people get out and they get out and they thrive. But then you have, other ones that carried things differently and they get out, they don't do so well without, their tribe or their, or maybe, the way that they're wired is just different, So, I guess that's another one of those things, like a sociology experiment, really. Like, what is it that made some people get out of the Army? You take two general people that are, average jokers, and one of them performs pretty well in the Army and the other one performs pretty well in the Army. And then you get them out and you send them on their way to go out in the civilian world, and one just nosedives, right? He tanks, and then the other one thrives. So what's the difference? And, I think that's, all these veterans administrations or all these veterans organizations and veterans studies and all these things is really trying to figure that out. What is it that makes one person get out and thrive and one doesn't? And then how do you replicate the person that got out and did well? You don't want to replicate, you reinforce success. You always reinforce success. You never reinforce failure. So once again, what's the answer? Fuck, I don't. Matter of fact, if we can figure that out on this podcast, we'd be millionaires, right? We'd be some of the most
That's a
successful
fact.
people on the planet if we could figure out what made people super successful and what made people just your average schmuck, or what causes people to spiral into that dark place. I don't know. That's, like I said, once again, it's all fascinating to me. Really is, because it all boils down to that. Really boils down to your mental capacity and how you what was it? I think it's Stephen Covey, 10 Habits of Highly Successful People. He talks about that. Like, how do you replicate success? How do you not replicate success? And then the only true freedom in life is there's a stimuli, and then there's the time that you're truly free to make a decision. And then there's the consequences of your decision. But the only true freedom, because, like he talks about a prisoner of war. One of them, the guards and, the Vietnamese just, man, they just fuck this dude up. But man, he's like happy. He's made himself, no matter what they do to him, he's taken the freedom to be okay. And then, of course, you have other dudes that, they just literally, they get so down that they actually just die. So, once again, that true freedom, and how do you do that? Where is that? And how do you make somebody take a stimuli and make a good decision about it so that at the end they're successful? And like I said, once again, if we can figure that shit out, we'd be good.
Right. Well, I think if there's one thing that I'm taking away, it's in terms of like defining what that success might look like. Maybe it's to impose your will on the world.
100%.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to use that. I'm going to use that. That's really good.
And that's but now, I mean, I'm in a weird spot now. So I got my retirement, and my VA check. And at the end of the day, I could live off of that. Would I be comfortable? Not necessarily, but it wouldn't be horrible, right? I wouldn't be, living in a cardboard box. I'd still have enough money to pay rent and eat, have a cell phone. Like, how hard do I want to work now? Like, so like I said, I can be, like I said, I'm not going to be a millionaire, but do I want to put myself back into a stressful life? Like, if somebody pays you $250,000 a year, they want access to you, like on the weekend, like back when I was a sergeant major. Not get paid $250,000, but I was a sergeant major, and people had access to me 24/7. Right now, I don't know if I want a job where I get paid, call me on the weekend money. So that's I'm kind of in this weird place now in my life where, like, I'm comfortable. I live comfortable. I've got a job, my job plus my retirement, and plus my disability. I'm comfortable. But I also catch myself wanting to impose my will, right? Like, I catch myself doing this at work, where I'm like, I'm going to be the next manager, just like I did as a soldier. Like, I want to be that staff sergeant. How do I be that staff sergeant? Well, obviously I have to do these things well. But now I've got to catch myself like, no, I don't want to be a regional manager. No, I don't want to be a project manager, because that is, you could call me on the weekend money. Yeah. Right. Because if I start doing those things and I'm in charge of those things, that means they want access to me 24/7. And I don't want to work that hard right now. Now, right. In 5 years, I'm still relatively young. I know, like, in military years, I'm like ancient, right? Like, when you're in the military, when you hear that somebody's 50, you're like, oh my God, that's old as fuck, right? But when you're in the civilian world and you tell somebody you're 48, and they're like, oh man, you're still a young man. You're like, because I'm 48 now. Maybe in 5 years, after I've done this transition and I'm fully away from the military, because I'm still kind of in the military. Well, not kind of in, I'm still around the military. I still teach in the military. So I'm still attached to it. Maybe after I'm completely away from it and I'm completely decompressed, maybe then I'll go looking for this high pressure job. But right now, as it stands, I don't want one. Like, so I'm in a weird position where like my nature is to impose my will onto things. Like that's who I am as a person, man. Like, and I'm sure, but I think most military, people that call themselves alphas, that's kind of who you are in life, man. You want to just, what's my next step to be better? Boom. And what does that take? So maybe what I'm trying to do now is kind of focus on just me and like how to make just me better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's real hard to be in an organization and not try to make the whole organization better and bend it to your will and, just make everything the way you want it. So I think that's part of my transition is getting out of the military, not doing that anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Like not trying.
This is like, I mean, you give up 27 years to an organization, like there's going to be, you've got some strings attached, and that's okay.
Yeah. And there's still just like this mentality of, man, if I was in charge of this is how I would do it. So how do I get in charge of it? Because I make this better. I can make this better if I was in charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to work that fucking hard, man. Like, but I catch myself doing it all the time. Like,
right.
Like how do I take this thing and make it better? But then once again, now if you start doing that, you're going to find yourself in charge of things because you're volunteering to be in charge of things. And in the civilian world, if you're not getting paid to be in charge of those things, don't do that shit. Right. It's not like being in the military, like, oh, I'll take on all these extra responsibilities because I just know it's better for my soldiers if I do that. And so it's hard to go.
I think you can do both. And I think so. And here's why. And it's because I feel very similar. And it's because the way that I think about it is your 9 to 5 is kind of what's paying the bills, but it's like, they're only getting like 25% of you. Right. And then on the 75% side, you impose your will on everything else, but it's all stuff for you because you've spent so much time like giving to the Army and like I do this podcast and like all of that, like self-improvement stuff, like you get to like just go all in on that and just like not as much at work. And that is like, I think that's the answer. Okay.
I like it. So, and I kind of feel that, because right now, like I'm doing like this bodybuilding, right? Like I'm trying to shape myself into not what the Army wanted. Like I don't have to run anymore. So man, I've when I say this, people are like, oh, just like every other veteran. I went from 175 to 190. I weigh 192 pounds right now. And, in the Army, I never could have done that. I couldn't do that because I still had to run. And when you're as short as I am, like I'm only 5'6", you put 10 pounds on this frame, dude, that slows you down. And I always wanted to, run fast because I have to, because I'm in the Army, and, do as many push-ups as I could, or even when the ACFT came, you still have to run 2 miles. So you can't, and I could max the deadlift at 175 pounds because I'm like 345 pounds or something. But now I've kind of started doing this bodybuilding thing. So now I put on, what is that, 15 pounds? So anyway, I went from 172, 175 to 192, 195 pounds. And it's weird because number one, I feel like I'm doing something wrong because I weigh too much and I don't run. I still do cardio, but I don't run. So I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And so I'm kind of with you. Like I've got like my job, but I also have like where I'm working on this whole weird, my wife calls it body dysmorphia thing. I'm going like, okay, so now I'm trying to get bigger, but now I'm fat, so now I got to lose weight. So, you're doing this whole bulk, and anyway, it's fun. It is a good time, and it is something for me. It's all about how I look at myself and how I feel about myself, but it's really just something fun to do. Like, okay, now I'm going to get as strong as I humanly can and get as big as I humanly can without, killing myself and, put myself, in, physical danger as far as like cardiac. You can put on too much weight, you start stressing your little ticker. And, I think I've got to be careful because genetically I'm, high cholesterol anyway, all that weird shit. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. You get your job that pays the bills, and yeah, you put in some effort there, and especially, because at the end of the day, my job is teaching soldiers still. So I still have to do that well because it could matter in the end, but I don't want to throw myself completely into something and give it 75%. I want 75% for me, my wife, and, my adult children. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I think so. Because I'm definitely not doing 100% job. That's because my wife used to call herself the mistress, because I was married to the Army and she was my mistress. Luckily I'm still married to the same woman. I don't know how she's put up with all my shit for all these years. God bless her, man. She's been through the military deployments, fuck my alcoholism, Jesus, and when you find one like this one, dude, hold on to that shit because it will make your life 100% better. Once again, Stephen Covey in 10 Habits was, you can't be interdependent until you're independent. But we shouldn't be independent shouldn't be what we're looking to be. We should be looking to be interdependent with our spouse and whatnot. So it was really, really kind of a cool idea. But yeah, I definitely think you're onto something. You get work only gets 25% of me nowadays instead of, like it used to get 90% of me all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like, you've got other time to like do stuff, hobbies and, things that, not 24/7 duty anymore. And like,
right. You don't have to worry about getting that 3:00 in the morning phone call. Like I literally, for this podcast, I guess my phone naturally was like, hey, you have an event coming up, here's the shortcut to do not disturb. I was like, I can do that. I can put my phone on do not disturb because nobody has to get a hold of me.
Right.
Nobody, there's nobody out there that is depending on me to make a decision for their life anytime soon.
Well, and you are making decisions, but it's only for you, which is a really great place, and your family. But that's right. A great place to be in.
Yeah, of course. It really is, man. Honestly, there is a fear when it's time to get out. And that might be the reason that I stayed around for a little bit longer, because honestly, I was just scared to get out. Like, what do you do? What are my finances going to look like? Because when you're thinking about retiring, like, okay, so if you stay for 20 years, you get 50% of your base pay, but your BAH and all this other stuff. So when you retire, you only get 50% of the pay. What is my financials going to look like? Oh my God, and then, what am I going to do? Because, one thing I learned from COVID was I can't not do anything. Like I always said, I was going to retire and like fish, right? Like I'm just going to fuck off. I'm not going to do anything. COVID taught me that is not an option for me. Like mentally, I will lose my shit if I don't have some sort of purpose. Like if I don't have work or something that is purposeful in my life, which I think is another thing that veterans struggle with, is purpose. You had a purpose when you're in the military. When you get out, you don't have a purpose. But that is one thing that COVID taught me. I have to have a purpose. I have to have a reason to get my ass up and go do stuff. Because if I don't, I will 100% like lose my mind. Like I will go crazy. I will start climbing the walls. Like like during COVID, I think I watched all of Netflix, and you can only watch so much TV.
That's a fact. That
Yeah,
is a
like
fact.
I watched all of the internet during COVID because we were in California, man. I don't know where you're actually at, like physically right now, but we were in California, and like they were serious about lockdowns, dude. It wasn't like a
Mhm.
Texas, like I'm in Texas now. Like whenever the CDC was like, hey, you need to start wearing masks, Texas was like, nah, we're not doing that. But California, man, they were serious. Like when you were locked down, like we actually made it off of Fort Irwin onto one of the malls one time, and it was like The Walking Dead. Like nobody was there. It was so
Mhm.
weird. Like all the stores were closed, and we were like, man, this is weird shit. Anyway, yeah, man, got to have a purpose. I have to have something to do, or I'll go crazy. I'll lose it.
I think that that's true for all of us. I'm right there with you on that. Heath, I really appreciate you spending some time with me and downloading us on 27 years of Army leadership experience.
Yeah, man. I like say, man, I love this because, like I said, the whole time I'm on this, when I'm talking on this thing, I'm thinking, what did I learn the hard way, and what can I put out there that hopefully somebody will watch, and they'll be like, man, that inspired me to do something different in my life, or whatever the case. But man, I really appreciate you having me, dude. And I also I want to tell you also, Brock, that it's inspirational that you're doing something like this, because not everybody has the capacity to keep doing something like this and trying to make a difference for soldiers and veterans. And man, that inspires me, what you're doing, and I truly appreciate it, man. I really do. It's somebody that's trying to do something outside of themselves. That's not all selfish like I am right now, right? Like looking out for me, fuck everybody. You're actually you made it out of the military. You realize that there's a need and a want for something like this. There's that knowledge of, not just for people that are in, but for people that are out there. There's this gap out there, and you're trying to fill it. And I appreciate that, man.
I appreciate the kind words. Those are probably far too generous.
Oh, I don't think so.
There is a big part of this that is extremely selfish. And like, the jury is still out on whether the world actually wants this podcast or not
Right.
yet. But I know in the interim, I am getting to connect with some really great, fantastic people, and hopefully have some conversations that mean something.
Yeah. And and if it's just the one person that watches it and goes, hey, that meant something, I learned something from that. That's it, man. That makes it, even though it may have had selfish beginnings, and like you said, it may still be, there's some selfish parts of it where, you want to get, people to watch it, and there are things that I'm sure are selfish about it, but like even being a leader, there's some level of selfishness, right? Like whether I want to be in charge, I want to be that guy that I admired. That's still, there's still some selfish aspects to it. There's always is. There's always some kind of little selfish part of it, even though people want to, the humble leadership or servant leadership, there's always some level of selfishness to it. So I think you're no different than the rest of us humans.
Well, I appreciate that. If people want to connect with you,
Yeah.
where should we send them? And then also, how can we be useful to you?
Twitter is a good one. LinkedIn is a good one. I can shoot you my personal information as well. You've already got my email. By any means, anybody that needs to get in contact with me or wants to get in contact with me, that is a great way to do it. Like I said, my Twitter is, I think it's at Real Heath Smith. My LinkedIn is m.heath.smith, just like actually that's my Gmail as well.
Heath, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you too. And like I said, man, thanks for having me on. And man, keep grinding, brother. Keep grinding.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Your listenership helps me better educate people like you and the rest of our nation's military, both past and present, on building a successful life outside of military service. If you're looking for more ways the top vets are leading more effective lifestyles, building businesses, and using the resources designed specifically for you, press here for a selection of some of the best clips. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date, and I will be talking with you soon.